The champagne glass slipped from my hand in slow motion. I watched it fall, watched the golden liquid arc through the air like liquid gold catching the chandeliers above, watched it shatter against the marble floor of the hotel ballroom with a sound I couldn't hear over the roaring in my ears as I stared at the massive presentation screen at the front of the room. There, projected in 40-foot glory for everyone to see, was my thesis. My research. My 3 years of painstaking work on sustainable urban water systems, the project that had consumed my nights and weekends, the breakthrough that was supposed to launch my career. Every chart, every graph, every carefully constructed argument about gray water recycling in metropolitan areas. But the name on the PowerPoint title slide wasn't mine. Dr. Vanessa Chen, the conference moderator, announced proudly into the microphone, her voice echoing through the ballroom filled with 300 of the nation's leading water resource experts, has revolutionized our approach to gray water recycling in metropolitan areas. Her innovative 3-tier filtration system could change how we think about water conservation in high-density urban environments. Vanessa, my sister, my twin sister, and she was taking her place at the podium, smiling that brilliant smile I knew so well, preparing to present my life's work as if it were her own creation. My name is Victoria Chen, and I'm 34 years old, or at least I was, until the moment I realized I'd been systematically erased from my own life, my own work, my own identity. Until I understood that the person I trusted most in the world had been stealing from me for years, piece by piece, until there was nothing left that was truly mine. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up and tell you how I got here, to this hotel ballroom in Chicago, watching my twin sister commit the ultimate betrayal. Growing up in Portland, Oregon, Vanessa and I were inseparable in the way that only identical twins can be. We were born 6 minutes apart on a rainy October morning. She came first, emerging into the world with what my mother described as an imperious cry demanding attention. I followed quietly, almost apologetically, as if I already understood that Vanessa would always take up more space than me. That 6 minutes made all the difference in our family. Vanessa was always first. First to walk at 10 months old while I waited until 11. First to read at age 4 while I struggled with letters until I was 5. First to lose a tooth. First to ride a bike. First to get accepted to college. I followed in her shadow, like a pale imitation, grateful just to be included in her brilliant orbit. Our parents, David and Helen Chen, were immigrants from Taiwan who'd built a successful medical supply business from nothing. They'd arrived in America with 2 suitcases and a dream, worked brutal hours, saved every penny, and created a comfortable middle-class life for us in a nice neighborhood in Northeast Portland. But their success came with expectations, particularly for their daughters. In traditional Chinese families, sons are prized, but our parents only had daughters, twins who looked identical, but who they treated very differently from the start. Vanessa was the golden child, the one destined for greatness, the daughter who would make them proud and justify all their sacrifices. I was the spare, the insurance policy, the one who would take care of things if Vanessa's inevitable brilliance didn't pan out the way everyone expected. Except Vanessa's brilliance was never in question. She excelled at everything. Perfect grades in school, first chair violin in youth orchestra, student body president, National Merit Scholar. She graduated as valedictorian from Lincoln High School and was accepted to Stanford University with a full academic scholarship to study environmental engineering. I graduated as salutatorian, second place as always, and was also accepted to Stanford with a partial scholarship. We were going to be roommates, continue our twin bond at college, study together like we always had. It should have been perfect. But that's when everything started to shift, when the cracks in our relationship that I'd been ignoring for years finally became impossible to overlook. The summer before we were supposed to start at Stanford, our father was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer. The news came like a thunderbolt, shattering our family's carefully constructed plans. Dad needed surgery, chemotherapy, months of treatment. Mom needed to keep the business running to pay for medical bills that insurance wouldn't fully cover. Someone needed to stay home, help coordinate Dad's care, drive him to appointments, manage his medications, help Mom with the business accounts. That someone was me. We had a family meeting in our living room, the kind where everyone sits in uncomfortable silence until someone says what needs to be said. Vanessa had already moved to Palo Alto, already started orientation week, already met her roommate, and joined a study group. She was settled, starting to build her future. It made sense for me to defer my admission, everyone agreed. Just for 1 year, just until Dad was through the worst of treatment and back on his feet. Vanessa was already established at Stanford. Moving her would disrupt her academic trajectory. I could delay, help the family, and join her the following year. I agreed, because that's what good daughters do. Because I loved my father and wanted to help him heal. Because some part of me had always accepted that Vanessa's future was more important than mine. Except I never made it to Stanford. Dad's treatment stretched from 6 months to a year, then to 18 months. The cancer went into remission, came back, went into remission again. I spent my gap year working full-time at the family business during the day and sitting with Dad through evening chemo sessions, watching poison drip into his veins while we played cards and pretended everything would be fine. By the time Dad was finally truly in remission, my Stanford acceptance had expired. I'd missed the window to defer again. I applied to other schools and was accepted to Portland State University with a decent scholarship. It was a fine school, a good program, but it wasn't Stanford. Vanessa called me the day I got my PSU acceptance letter. She was excited, supportive, full of praise for my sacrifice. "You're so strong, Vic," she said. "I could never have done what you did. And hey, Portland State has a great engineering program. You'll do amazing there." I told myself she was right, that it didn't matter where I got my degree, that the education was what counted. I told myself the bitter resentment I felt was unworthy, that I should be grateful for the opportunity to help my family, that Vanessa would have done the same for me if our positions were reversed. I'm not sure I ever really believed that last part. The 4 years that followed set the pattern for the rest of our relationship. Vanessa thrived at Stanford, made connections with professors who would shape her career, joined research groups working on cutting-edge environmental projects, presented at undergraduate conferences, got her name on published papers. She graduated summa cum laude and was accepted to MIT's doctoral program with full funding. I graduated from Portland State magna cum laude 3 years later, a year behind Vanessa, because I'd had to work part-time throughout college to help with family expenses. My grades were excellent, my research solid, but I didn't have the connections or opportunities that Stanford provided. I was accepted to the University of Washington's master's program in environmental engineering with partial funding. It was a good program, I told myself. Seattle was only 3 hours from Portland, close enough to help if Dad's health declined again. I could build a good career from UW. Not every successful engineer came from Stanford and MIT, but the gap between Vanessa and me kept widening. She got her PhD from MIT in 4 years, a remarkable achievement. Her dissertation on sustainable water systems in developing nations was published in Nature, one of the world's most prestigious scientific journals. She was recruited by Columbia University for a tenure-track position before she even finished her defense. At 28 years old, she was Dr. Vanessa Chen, rising star in environmental engineering, invited to speak at conferences around the world. I got my master's degree from UW in 2.5 years while working as a teaching assistant to pay my bills. My thesis on gray water recycling was solid work, but it was published in a regional journal that maybe a few hundred people read. I was recruited by Cascade Water Solutions, a respected but small engineering firm in Seattle that specialized in sustainable water management for municipal clients. At 29 years old, I was Victoria Chen, MS, competent engineer with a decent salary and good benefits. The difference in our trajectories should have created distance between us, should have made us grow apart as our lives diverged. But instead, we stayed close. Video calls every Sunday evening, visits every few months when Vanessa came back to Portland or I went to New York. We'd always been each other's best friend, and I clung to that connection even as the inequality between us grew more obvious. Looking back now, I can see how pathetic it was, how desperate I was to maintain the illusion that we were still equals. Still twins, still two halves of the same whole. But at the time, I genuinely believed we had a good relationship. I believed she cared about me and my work. I believed she was proud of me even if my accomplishments were smaller than hers. I believed she was my sister in more than just blood. The research project that would eventually destroy our relationship started 3 years ago, when I was 31. Cascade Water Solutions had won a contract to study water conservation options for Seattle's growing urban core. The city was facing pressure to reduce water consumption while accommodating thousands of new residents moving in every year. High-rise apartments were going up everywhere, and traditional water infrastructure was struggling to keep pace. I proposed a comprehensive study of gray water recycling systems for high-density residential buildings. Gray water, for those who don't know, is wastewater from sinks, showers, and laundry that can be treated and reused for non-potable purposes like toilet flushing and irrigation. It's not safe to drink, but it doesn't need to be dumped into the sewer system either. Capturing and reusing gray water could reduce a building's water consumption by 30 to 40%. The concept wasn't new, but existing systems were expensive, maintenance-intensive, and often produced inconsistent results. My idea was to design a 3-tier filtration system that would be cost-effective enough for widespread adoption in new construction. Physical filtration to remove particles, biological treatment to break down organic compounds, and UV disinfection for final treatment. Simple enough to maintain, sophisticated enough to meet safety standards. My boss at Cascade, a brilliant engineer named Robert Chen, no relation, approved the project enthusiastically. He gave me 2 junior engineers to assist with data collection and a modest budget for equipment and testing. For the first time in my career, I was leading my own research project, something that was truly mine from conception to execution. I was so excited that the first person I called was Vanessa. She answered on the second ring, slightly breathless. Victoria. Sorry, I just got out of a faculty meeting. What's up? I got approved for the Gray Water Project. I practically shouted into the phone. 3 years of funding, a team, everything. That's amazing. Her enthusiasm sounded genuine. Tell me everything. So I did. I spent an hour on the phone with her, explaining my concept for the 3-tier system, the challenges I anticipated, the potential impact if it worked. She asked thoughtful questions, offered suggestions based on her own research experience, and congratulated me repeatedly. This could be really significant, Vic, she said when I finally wound down. Seriously, if you can make this work at scale, it could change how we build cities. I'm so proud of you. Her words filled me with warmth. My brilliant sister was proud of me. Finally, I was doing something worthy of her respect. Keep me updated, okay? She continued. I want to hear about every development. This is exactly the kind of practical application that my theoretical work could benefit from. Maybe we could even collaborate on a paper eventually. That would be amazing, I said, already imagining seeing our names together on a publication. Chen and Chen. Looking back, that was the moment I should have been suspicious. Vanessa had never shown much interest in gray water systems before. Her research focused on large-scale watershed management and policy. But I was so flattered by her attention, so hungry for her approval, that I didn't question why she suddenly cared about my very specific, very technical project. I just felt grateful that my successful sister wanted to be involved in my work. Over the next 2 years, I kept my promise. Every breakthrough, every setback, every data point I shared with Vanessa. Our Sunday phone calls became research sessions where I'd walk her through my progress and she'd offer feedback and encouragement. I sent her my preliminary data, my design schematics, my budget proposals. I trusted her completely. She was my twin, my best friend, my confidant. Why wouldn't I share everything with her? The work itself was grueling, but exhilarating. I spent countless evenings in Cascade's lab, testing different filtration media, measuring flow rates, analyzing water samples for contaminants. My team installed pilot systems in 3 Seattle apartment buildings and monitored their performance for 18 months. We collected thousands of data points on water quality, system efficiency, maintenance requirements, and cost effectiveness. The results were better than I'd hoped. My 3-tier system reduced water consumption by 38% on average while maintaining safety standards that exceeded municipal requirements. The installation cost was 40% less than existing gray water systems, and maintenance was simple enough that building managers could handle routine tasks without specialized training. It worked. My system actually worked, and it could be scaled up for widespread adoption. I was so proud I could barely contain myself. This was my breakthrough, my contribution to the field, the achievement that would establish me as more than just Vanessa's less accomplished twin. I immediately called her to share the news. Holy shit, Vic, she breathed when I told her the results. This is incredible. You actually did it. I actually did it, I repeated, grinning so hard my face hurt. Vanessa, this could be huge. Robert thinks we should publish in the Journal of Environmental Engineering. He's helping me write up the research paper now. That's perfect. When do you think you'll submit? Probably in 3 months. We want to make sure the data is airtight, every table perfect, every conclusion supported. Makes sense. She paused. Hey, would you be willing to send me your draft when you have it? I'd love to give it a read, offer some feedback from an academic perspective. Publishing in major journals is different from regional ones, and I've been through the process a few times now. That would be amazing, I said gratefully. Thank you, Nessa. Of course. That's what sisters are for. I sent her the draft 6 weeks later. It was rough, still needed significant editing, but it contained all my core research, my methodology, my data, my conclusions, everything that made the project mine. She sent back detailed comments a week later, suggestions for restructuring certain sections, recommendations for additional citations, notes on how to frame the research for maximum impact. Her feedback was thoughtful and helpful, and I incorporated most of it into my revisions. I never suspected she was doing anything other than helping me succeed. 2 months later, I submitted my paper to the Journal of Environmental Engineering. Robert and I celebrated with expensive sushi and sake, toasting to my bright future in research. The peer review process would take several months, he warned, but he was confident the paper would be accepted. The work was too good, too important to reject. Around the same time, I got an email notification about the National Water Resources Conference being held in Chicago in 6 months. It was the premier conference in our field, attended by leading researchers, policymakers, and industry professionals from across North America. I'd never presented at a conference of that caliber before, but Robert encouraged me to submit an abstract. "What's the worst that can happen?" he said. "They reject it, and you try again next year. But with results like yours, I think you've got a good shot." So I submitted an abstract of my research, a condensed version highlighting my key findings and their potential impact. Then I waited, trying not to get my hopes up too much. 6 weeks later, I got the acceptance email. My paper had been selected for presentation at the National Water Resources Conference. I'd have a 20-minute slot in one of the technical sessions, a chance to share my work with people who could actually understand its significance. I called Vanessa immediately, practically screaming with excitement. "I got in. I'm presenting at the national conference in Chicago." "No way." She sounded genuinely thrilled. "Vic, that's huge. Congratulations." "I can't believe it," I babbled. This could change everything for my career. Robert says people get recruited from presentations at this conference. University positions, research grants, everything. "You deserve it," she said warmly. "After all your hard work, you absolutely deserve this recognition." We talked for another hour about my presentation strategy, what to wear, how to handle questions from the audience. She'd presented at countless conferences by this point and had excellent advice. I took notes on everything she said, grateful once again for my brilliant sister's guidance. What I didn't know, what I had no way of knowing, was that Vanessa had already submitted her own abstract to the same conference, using my research, my data, my ideas, presenting my work as if it were her own creation. The conference was 6 months away. I had time to polish my presentation, practice my delivery, and prepare for what I thought would be my big moment. I had no idea I was preparing to watch my career get stolen in front of 300 witnesses. 3 months before Chicago, something shifted in my conversations with Vanessa. She started asking fewer questions about my research, seemed distracted during our Sunday calls. When I asked if everything was okay, she blamed work stress. Columbia was putting pressure on pre-tenure faculty to increase their publication output, she explained, and she was scrambling to finish a paper. "I'm sure it'll be great," I said sympathetically. "Your work always is." Looking back, I'm amazed at my own blindness. All the signs were there. Her sudden lack of interest in my project after months of intense involvement. Her vague mentions of a new research direction she was exploring. The way she changed the subject whenever I mentioned my upcoming presentation. But I didn't see it. I was too busy with my own preparation, too focused on my own excitement, too trusting of the person I thought I knew better than anyone in the world. A month before the conference, I got an email from the conference organizers with the full schedule. I immediately scrolled to find my presentation slot. Thursday, 2 p.m., Conference Room B, technical session on urban water management. Perfect. Afternoon presentation, technical audience, plenty of time to settle in before I presented. I was scrolling through the rest of the schedule when I saw it. Dr. Vanessa Chen, keynote speaker, Wednesday, 10 a.m., Grand Ballroom, Innovations in Urban Water Sustainability. I stared at the screen, confused. Vanessa was giving the keynote. She hadn't mentioned that. We'd talked just 3 days ago, and she hadn't said a word about being at the conference, let alone delivering the keynote address. Maybe she wanted to surprise me, I thought. Maybe she'd arranged it so we could celebrate together, so she could watch my presentation, and I could watch hers. Sisters supporting each other at the same conference would be a great story. I called her immediately, excited to congratulate her on the keynote. The call went to voicemail. I left an enthusiastic message about how amazing it was that we'd both be in Chicago, how we should plan to have dinner together, how proud I was that she was giving the keynote. She didn't call back that night, or the next day, or the day after that. Finally, 3 days later, she sent a text. "Hey Vic, sorry, crazy busy with this paper deadline. Yes, I'll be in Chicago. Let's definitely try to meet up if schedules allow. Conference is always hectic though, so no guarantees." The message felt oddly distant, but I attributed it to her stress about work. I texted back enthusiastically and started looking forward to the conference even more. Not only would I be presenting my research, but I'd get to see my sister too. The universe, it seemed, was aligning in my favor. I flew into Chicago on Tuesday afternoon, the day before Vanessa's keynote. The Palmer House Hotel, the conference venue, was a historic beauty, all gilded ceilings and marble columns. I checked into my modest room, nothing fancy but clean and comfortable, and spent the evening reviewing my presentation notes one last time. Wednesday morning, I woke up energized and excited. Vanessa's keynote was at 10. I'd go watch her, then spend the afternoon attending technical sessions and networking. Tomorrow would be my turn to present. I tried calling Vanessa that morning to see if she wanted to meet for breakfast, but again, the call went to voicemail. I assumed she was busy with last-minute preparations for her keynote. I'd see her in the ballroom. At 9:45, I made my way to the grand ballroom, a massive space with soaring ceilings and glittering chandeliers. Rows of chairs faced a raised stage where a massive screen waited for the presentation. The room was filling up quickly, easily 300 people, all the major players in water resources engineering. I found a seat in the middle section, not too close, but close enough to see Vanessa's face. I wanted to catch her eye, see her smile when she spotted me in the crowd. At 10 exactly, the conference chair took the stage to introduce the keynote speaker. It is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Vanessa Chen from Columbia University. She began. Dr. Chen's groundbreaking research on sustainable water management has positioned her as one of the leading voices in our field. Her work bridges the gap between theoretical frameworks and practical applications. And her contributions to urban water sustainability are reshaping how we think about resource conservation in high-density environments. I applauded enthusiastically, proud of my sister's accomplishments. Around me, the audience applauded politely. Faces turned toward the stage. Vanessa walked out wearing a designer suit I'd never seen before, charcoal gray with subtle pinstripes that probably cost more than I spent on clothes in a year. Her hair was styled perfectly, her makeup flawless. She looked every inch the successful academic, confident and poised. She took her place at the podium, smiled at the audience, and began. Thank you so much for that kind introduction, and thank you all for being here this morning. I want to talk to you today about something that could fundamentally change how we approach water conservation in our cities. The first slide appeared on the massive screen behind her. I saw it and felt my smile falter. Innovations in Gray Water Recycling, a 3-tier approach to urban sustainability by Dr. Vanessa Chen. Wait, that was my title. The exact title I'd used in my conference abstract, but that must be a coincidence, I thought desperately. Lots of people work on gray water systems. Lots of people use similar terminology. Then the second slide appeared, a diagram of a 3-tier filtration system. Physical filtration, biological treatment, UV disinfection. My system, my exact design, my hands went numb. The ballroom suddenly felt too hot, too crowded, too impossible to be real. Vanessa continued talking, her voice confident and clear. The key challenge in gray water recycling has always been balancing effectiveness with cost. Existing systems are either too expensive for widespread adoption or too simple to meet safety standards. What I've developed is a middle path, a system that's both affordable and highly effective. What she developed. She was claiming she'd developed it. The slides continued. My data, my charts showing water quality improvements, my graphs demonstrating cost effectiveness, my photographs of the pilot installations in Seattle buildings, my calculations, my tables, my conclusions, every single element of my 3 years of work, presented as if Vanessa had created it all. I sat frozen in my seat, unable to process what I was seeing. This couldn't be real. There had to be some explanation. Maybe she was presenting on my behalf. Maybe this was some kind of surprise. Maybe even glamorous. The research was conducted over 2 years at 3 sites in the greater New York area, Vanessa said, advancing to a slide showing buildings I'd never seen before. Working with Columbia's Urban Water Lab, we installed pilot systems and monitored their performance across multiple parameters. She was lying, actively, deliberately lying. The research had been conducted in Seattle, not New York, at sites I had selected and monitored, with my team, my equipment, my countless hours in the lab analyzing samples. And she was claiming it all as hers. That's when the champagne glass I'd been handed at the door, part of some celebration I no longer understood, slipped from my nerveless fingers. It fell in slow motion, crystal catching the light from the chandeliers, liquid streaming out like golden ribbons. It hit the marble floor with a crash that seemed impossibly loud, even though no one else seemed to notice over Vanessa's smooth voice explaining my research. People turned to look at me. A woman nearby asked if I was all right. Someone called for an usher to clean up the glass. But I couldn't hear any of them over the roaring in my ears, over the sound of my world shattering along with that champagne flute. On stage, Vanessa's eyes found mine across the crowded ballroom. For one perfect moment, our identical faces stared at each other. I saw her see me, saw her recognize my shock and horror, and I saw her smile, small and cold, before turning back to her presentation, as if I weren't even there. That's when I knew. This wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. This was theft, calculated and deliberate. My twin sister had stolen my life's work, and she'd done it so completely, so thoroughly, that she was presenting it as a keynote address while I sat in the audience watching her take credit for every minute of the 3 years I'd poured into this research. The room started spinning. I stood up abruptly, tripping over the person next to me, mumbling apologies I didn't mean. I had to get out of there before I screamed, before I ran to that stage and tore my sister away from my research, before I did something that would end my career along with my relationship with the person I thought I knew better than myself. I stumbled out of the ballroom into the marble hallway, my heels clicking too loudly against the polished floor. People milled around, conference attendees chatting over coffee, checking their phones, laughing at jokes I couldn't hear. I leaned against a pillar, trying to breathe, trying to think through the haze of shock and betrayal. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Vanessa. "Hey Vic, how's Chicago? Hope the conference is amazing. Miss you." I stared at the message, at the casual tone, at the fake affection. She'd sent it while standing on that stage presenting my work. She'd texted me a lie while actively stealing from me. How long had she been lying? How many of our Sunday phone calls had been performances? How many times had she pretended to care about my research while planning to take it for herself? My fingers shook as I pulled up my email, searching through months of correspondence. There it was, my conference acceptance email from 6 months ago. Victoria Chen, presentation scheduled for Thursday, 2 p.m., abstract on gray water recycling systems in high-density urban environments. Then I searched for Vanessa's keynote announcement. It had been added to the conference schedule just 3 weeks ago. A special edition, the conference chair's email explained, from one of the field's rising stars, Dr. Vanessa Chen, whose groundbreaking research on urban water sustainability merited keynote status. 3 weeks ago. She'd known for 6 months that I would be presenting this research. She'd helped me refine my abstract, given me advice on my presentation, encouraged me to submit. And then she'd stolen it and arranged to present it first, as a keynote, ensuring that when I gave my presentation tomorrow, everyone would think I was the one copying her. The betrayal was so complete, so perfectly executed, that I almost admired it. Almost. I scrolled back through our text messages, through months of conversations where I'd shared every detail of my progress, every breakthrough I'd celebrated with her, every problem I'd asked her help solving, every piece of data I'd excitedly reported. I'd handed her everything she needed to destroy me, gift wrapped with my trust and sisterly love. My phone buzzed again, an email notification. I opened it without thinking. From Journal of Environmental Engineering. Subject, regarding your submission. Dear Ms. Chen, we regret to inform you that we cannot proceed with publication of your manuscript, Innovations in Gray Water Recycling, a 3-tier approach to urban sustainability, as we have already accepted a substantially similar paper on this topic from another author. While we appreciate your interest in our journal, we must reject papers that duplicate previously accepted work. I read the email 3 times before its meaning sank in. Another author had already submitted my research, already had it accepted for publication. Vanessa. It had to be Vanessa. She hadn't just stolen my conference presentation. She'd stolen my publication, my primary evidence of original research, the foundation of any claim I might make to having created this work. I slid down the pillar until I was sitting on the marble floor, my conference badge pressing awkwardly against my chest, my carefully chosen professional outfit rumpled and suddenly meaningless. People walked past, giving me curious looks, probably wondering if I was drunk or sick. I didn't care. Let them wonder. Let them stare. My entire career, everything I'd worked for, had just been erased by my own sister, by the person I'd trusted most in the world. The ballroom doors opened and attendees started streaming out, the keynote apparently over. I heard fragments of conversation. Brilliant work. Could revolutionize urban water management. Dr. Chen is definitely someone to watch. They were praising my work. They were praising Vanessa for my work. I stayed on the floor, unable to move, unable to process what to do next. Tomorrow, I was supposed to present this research. Now, if I did, I'd look like I was plagiarizing Vanessa. The stolen work would be attributed to me, the thief, while she got credit for my brilliance. It was perfect. She'd positioned herself so completely that anything I said would make me look like the liar, the envious twin, trying to steal her successful sister's accomplishments. Unless I could prove otherwise. Unless I had evidence that this was mine first. That thought jolted me into action. I pulled out my laptop, connecting to the hotel's Wi-Fi right there on the floor, and started pulling up files. Every draft I'd created, complete with timestamps and revision histories. Every email I'd sent my boss Robert about the research. Every data file from the pilot installations, complete with metadata showing when and where they were created. I had 3 years of documentation proving this work was mine. Surely that would be enough. Unless Vanessa had documentation too. Unless she'd been even more thorough than I realized, creating her own false trail of evidence while stealing mine. My phone rang. Vanessa. I stared at her name on the screen. My identical twin. My other half. My betrayer. I answered. Victoria! Her voice was bright, cheerful, not a hint of guilt. Oh my God. Wasn't that keynote amazing? Did you see it? The speaker was incredible. That was you, I said flatly. That was your keynote, Vanessa. A pause. Oh, did you see me? I wasn't sure you'd make it. I know morning sessions can be hard after traveling. I saw you present my research. Silence, longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. Colder. More calculated. Victoria, I don't know what you think you saw, but I saw 3 years of my work presented under your name. My filtration system. My data. My pilot installations. Mine? Vanessa. All of it mine. That's absurd. She laughed, but it sounded forced. You're confused. Maybe jealous? I know you're presenting tomorrow, and you're probably nervous, but accusing me of stealing your work is... I sent you everything, I interrupted. Every draft, every data point, every breakthrough. You pretended to help me while you were copying my research for yourself. Prove it, she said quietly. Those 2 words hung between us, a challenge and a threat. I will, I said, and hung up. But even as I said it, I wondered if I could. Vanessa was Dr. Chen, established researcher, published in Nature, on her way to tenure at Columbia. I was Victoria Chen, MS, working for a private firm, presenting at my first major conference. Who would believe me over her? That night in my hotel room, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios. I could confront her publicly at tomorrow's session. I could file a formal complaint with the conference ethics board. I could call Robert and explain what had happened. Or I could do nothing. Present my research as planned, hope someone believed I developed it independently, pray that the truth would eventually come out. But I'd spent my whole life being the quiet twin, the accommodating sister, the one who stepped aside for Vanessa's success. And where had that gotten me? Erased. Stolen from. Betrayed. At 3 a.m, I made my decision. I opened my laptop and started building a new presentation. Not the one I'd planned to give, the careful academic introduction to my gray water system. This one would be different. This one would be a side-by-side comparison showing my original work next to Vanessa's theft. This one would be the truth, laid out for everyone to see. By dawn, I had a new presentation. Screenshots of Vanessa's keynote slides placed next to my original files, complete with creation dates and metadata. Emails I'd sent her sharing my research, dated months before her presentation. Lab notebooks from my Seattle installations, stamped and witnessed by my team. Every piece of evidence I had, compiled into an irrefutable case. The question was whether I had the courage to present it. I spent Thursday morning in my room, pacing, rehearsing, questioning everything. What if I was wrong? What if I'd somehow misunderstood? What if confronting Vanessa would destroy more than just our relationship? But every time doubt crept in, I remembered her smile when she saw me in the ballroom. That cold, knowing smile that said she'd won and she knew it. No, I wasn't wrong. And I wasn't going to be silent anymore. At 1:30 p.m., I walked into conference room B where my presentation was scheduled. The room was much smaller than the grand ballroom. Maybe 60 seats, about half filled with afternoon attendees who probably had no idea they were about to witness something other than a standard technical presentation. I set up my laptop, tested the connection, and took my place at the podium. And there, in the back row, sat Vanessa. Our eyes met across the room. She was smiling again, that same cold smile. She'd come to watch me present my stolen research, confident that I wouldn't dare challenge her publicly, that family loyalty and fear of embarrassment would keep me quiet. She was wrong. The moderator introduced me, reading from my bio. Victoria Chen, master's degree in environmental engineering from the University of Washington, currently working with Cascade Water Solutions in Seattle, researching sustainable water management practices in urban environments. I took a breath and advanced to my first slide. The title appeared on the screen. Stolen Research. A case study in academic theft and sibling betrayal. I heard Vanessa's sharp intake of breath from the back row. Good afternoon, I began, my voice steadier than I felt. I was scheduled to present my research on gray water recycling systems today. Instead, I'm going to tell you a different story about what happens when someone you trust completely, someone who shares your DNA, steals 3 years of your work and presents it as their own. The room went dead silent. Phones came out. People leaned forward in their seats. In the back row, Vanessa half stood, then sat back down, trapped. Leaving would be an admission of guilt. Yesterday morning, I continued. Many of you attended the keynote address by Dr. Vanessa Chen. It was an impressive presentation about a 3-tier gray water filtration system for urban high-rises. Innovative, practical, potentially game-changing. I paused, meeting the eyes of people in the audience. It was also my research, created over 3 years, stolen by my twin sister, and presented as her original work. Gasps rippled through the room. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." I clicked to the next slide, showing Vanessa's keynote title slide next to my conference abstract from 6 months ago. Identical titles, identical topic, but my submission was dated 6 months earlier. I submitted this abstract in January, I explained. Dr. Chen's keynote was added to the schedule 3 weeks ago, despite the fact that keynotes are typically planned a year in advance. I wondered why she got such a last-minute spot. Now I understand. She needed to present before I did to establish herself as the originator of this research. Next slide. Side-by-side images of Vanessa's filtration system diagram, next to my original design, complete with the timestamp showing I'd created it 18 months ago. This is her slide showing the 3-tier system. And here's my original design, created in February of last year and sent to my sister in an email asking for her feedback on my research. Notice anything similar? The audience was riveted. In the back, Vanessa's face had gone white. I walked them through it, slide after slide, her charts using my exact data, her graphs duplicating my analysis down to the axis labels, her photographs of pilot installations that I'd personally supervised in Seattle, which she claimed were from New York. And between each comparison, I showed the emails. Messages to Vanessa beginning, "Hey Nessa, you won't believe what I discovered today," or wanted to share my latest results with you. Each one dated months before her keynote, each one providing her with the information she needed to steal my work. Some of you might wonder why I shared my research so freely with Dr. Chen. The answer is simple. She's my twin sister. We've been each other's closest confidants our entire lives. When she showed interest in my work, asked detailed questions, offered to help me refine my ideas, I thought I was fortunate to have such a brilliant sister who cared about my success. I clicked to the next slide, a childhood photo of Vanessa and me, identical in every way, smiling into the camera with our arms around each other. I trusted her completely. I shared every aspect of my research, every breakthrough and setback, because I thought we were a team. I thought she wanted to help me succeed. I looked directly at Vanessa then. I was wrong. She wasn't helping me. She was stealing from me, piece by piece, building her version of my research while I handed her everything she needed. This is ridiculous. Vanessa's voice rang out, sharp and defensive. She stood up, her hands clenched into fists. This is nothing but sibling jealousy. I've been working on this research independently for 2 years. The fact that my sister happens to be working on something similar is coincidental. Nothing more. Is it? I asked calmly. Then you won't mind submitting your original files for metadata analysis. You won't mind showing your lab notebooks from your supposed pilot installations in New York. You won't mind explaining why I have emails from you asking detailed questions about my filtration system, questions that make no sense if you were developing your own version independently. She opened her mouth, closed it. The room waited. I turned back to the audience. I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing this because academic integrity is the foundation of everything we do. Because if we allow theft to go unchallenged, even when it's difficult, even when it's family, we undermine the entire scientific enterprise. I advanced to my final slide, a quote, "The truth will set you free, but first, it will make you miserable." I don't know who said that first, but it's apt. The truth is miserable. The truth is that my twin sister, the person I loved and trusted most in the world, valued her career ambitions more than our relationship. The truth is that she saw my work not as something to celebrate, but as something to take. I closed my laptop and faced the audience. I have 3 years of documentation to support my claim. Lab notebooks, data files, emails, photographs, all with metadata proving when and where they were created. I'll be filing a formal complaint with the conference ethics board, and I encourage anyone interested in the truth to examine the evidence themselves. I paused. Thank you for your time, and thank you for listening to what I know was an uncomfortable presentation. Questions? The room erupted. The moderator was trying desperately to restore order. Half the audience was on their phones, probably texting colleagues or posting to social media. Several people rushed toward the podium, wanting to see the evidence up close. And in the back row, Vanessa pushed through the crowd toward the exit, her face a mask of fury and humiliation. Our eyes met one last time as she reached the door. The hatred in her gaze was so pure, so intense, that I actually took a step back. Then she was gone, and I was surrounded by people asking questions, demanding to see files, offering support or skepticism in equal measure. A woman in her 40s pushed through to the podium. She had tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she said, her voice shaking. My former graduate advisor stole my dissertation and published it under his name. I had no proof, no witnesses, no one who would believe me over an established researcher. Watching you speak up, seeing you refuse to be silent, it means everything to me. She squeezed my hand and disappeared back into the crowd. That moment, more than anything else, made me realize this was bigger than just Vanessa and me. This was about every researcher who'd ever been stolen from, every junior academic exploited by someone more powerful, every person told to stay quiet to preserve relationships or careers. The moderator finally restored some semblance of order. "Miss Chen," she said, clearly flustered, "this is highly irregular. We'll need to convene the ethics board immediately. Can you provide copies of your evidence?" "All of it," I said. "Every file, every email, every piece of documentation I have." The next few hours were a blur of meetings and statements. The conference ethics board, a panel of 5 senior researchers, convened an emergency session in a small meeting room. I presented my evidence, walking them through the timeline, showing them the metadata on my files, the emails to Vanessa, the lab notebooks from Seattle. Vanessa, when summoned, arrived with her jaw set and her eyes hard. She sat across the table from me, my identical twin, and I felt like I was looking at a stranger wearing my face. She denied everything at first. This is a misunderstanding born from Victoria's confusion about collaborative research. We discussed these ideas together. If there are similarities in our work, it's because we're twins who think alike. The board chair, a distinguished woman in her 70s named Dr. Patricia Huang, raised an eyebrow. "Dr. Chen? Miss Chen has emails showing she sent you detailed research findings over a period of 2 years. Your keynote was added to the schedule just 3 weeks ago. Can you explain that timeline?" Vanessa shifted in her chair. I had been planning to present this work at a different venue when the conference organizers reached out with a last-minute keynote opportunity. I couldn't pass that up. And the fact that your sister was already scheduled to present essentially the same research the next day? A pause. I wasn't aware of Victoria's presentation topic until I arrived at the conference. "That's a lie," I said quietly. "I told you 6 months ago that I'd been accepted. I told you what I'd be presenting. You told me you were working on gray water systems," Vanessa snapped. "That's a broad topic. I had no idea you'd developed the same specific approach I had." Huang pulled up something on her tablet. "Miss Chen, can you provide your original research files? The ones you used to create your keynote presentation?" Vanessa hesitated. "They're on my university computer. I didn't bring them to the conference. Your presentation slides don't have metadata showing when they were created. I created them in PowerPoint online. The metadata isn't preserved the same way." "How convenient," another board member muttered. Dr. Huang turned to me. "Miss Chen, Victoria, can we verify the metadata on your files?" "Absolutely." I pulled out my laptop. Every file, every timestamp, every piece of digital evidence. I also have witnesses from my company who can verify the timeline of my research. The board spent 2 hours examining evidence. They brought in a digital forensics expert to verify that my file metadata hadn't been tampered with. They called my boss Robert in Seattle, who confirmed via video call that I'd been leading this research project for 3 years and that he'd reviewed every stage of my work. Vanessa sat silent through most of it, her face pale but composed. Only once did she look at me, and the expression in her eyes was so full of venom that I had to look away. Finally, Dr. Huang called for a private board deliberation. Vanessa and I were sent to separate waiting areas. I sat in a hallway, my back against the wall, trying to process everything that had happened in the past 2 days. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Vanessa says you're making terrible accusations against her at the conference. What is going on? So Vanessa had already started her campaign with our parents. I typed out a response explaining what had happened, then deleted it. This wasn't a conversation to have over text. I called instead. My mother answered on the second ring. Victoria, what have you done? I told the truth, Mom. Vanessa stole my research and presented it as her own. That's absurd. Vanessa would never. I have proof. Emails, files, timestamps, everything. She's been copying my work for 2 years. Silence. Then, you're accusing your own sister of theft? In public? She stole 3 years of my work, Mom. What was I supposed to do? Stay quiet? You're supposed to protect family. My mother's voice rose. Whatever disagreement you two have about your research, you handle it privately. You don't humiliate your sister in front of her colleagues. She humiliated herself when she stole from me. Victoria, please. My mother's tone shifted, became pleading. Vanessa has worked so hard for her career. She's up for tenure next year. If these accusations damage her reputation, it could ruin everything she's built. And there it was, the same dynamic that had governed my entire life. Vanessa's success mattered. Vanessa's career mattered. Vanessa's reputation mattered. My work, my career, my future, those were acceptable casualties in service of protecting my sister. What about what she did to me? I asked. Doesn't that matter? You're being dramatic. Your father and I raised you better than this. Sisters should support each other, not tear each other down. I'm not tearing her down. She stole from me, and I'm holding her accountable. If you continue with this, my mother said, her voice hardening, if you pursue these accusations and damage Vanessa's career, you need to understand there will be consequences for our family. Meaning what? Meaning your father and I will have to choose who to support. And I think you know who that will be. The ultimatum hung between us, as clear as if she'd said it outright. Vanessa or me, the golden child or the spare, the successful one or the troublemaker. I love you, Mom, I said, and I love Vanessa even after what she did. But I love myself too, and I'm not going to destroy myself to protect someone who betrayed me. I hung up before she could respond. An hour later, Dr. Huang called us back into the meeting room. Both Vanessa and I took our seats, not looking at each other. After careful review of all available evidence, Dr. Huang began, this board has reached a decision. The evidence overwhelmingly supports Ms. Victoria Chen's claim that the research presented in Dr. Vanessa Chen's keynote address was originally developed by Victoria over a 3-year period. Vanessa's face went white. The metadata on Victoria's files, combined with the timeline of emails and the testimony of her supervisor, clearly establishes her as the original researcher. Dr. Chen's inability to provide comparable documentation, combined with the suspicious timing of her keynote addition to the conference schedule, further supports this conclusion. Dr. Huang looked at Vanessa directly. Dr. Chen, this board finds that you committed academic theft. We will be taking the following actions. Your keynote presentation will be retracted from all conference proceedings. The video will be removed from the conference website. We will be notifying your institution, Columbia University, of these findings. We will also be notifying MIT to inquire about the originality of your doctoral dissertation. No. Vanessa half stood. You can't do this. I have a career, a reputation, which you built on stolen work, Dr. Huang said firmly. This board takes academic integrity seriously. What you did is not only unethical, it's potentially career-ending. You should have thought about the consequences before you stole your sister's research. Vanessa turned to me then, her face contorted with rage. You destroyed me. Your own sister. Are you happy now? I didn't destroy you, I said quietly. You destroyed yourself when you decided your ambition was more important than integrity, more important than our relationship. She grabbed her bag and stormed out, slamming the door behind her hard enough to make the walls shake. Dr. Huang turned to me, her expression softening slightly. Miss Chen, what you did today took extraordinary courage. Most people in your position would have stayed silent to preserve family relationships or avoid conflict. You chose truth instead. I didn't feel courageous. I felt exhausted and heartbroken and sick. Your research is impressive, she continued. The kind of innovative work our field needs. Have you considered pursuing a PhD? I was supposed to, I said, before my father got sick, before I had to stay home, before... I trailed off. It's not too late, another board member said. I'm at the University of Michigan. We have a fellowship program that would be perfect for someone with your experience and some research record. Would you be interested? I stared at him. You're offering me a position? I'm offering you an opportunity to complete the research you started with the resources and support you deserve. You've already done the hard work. Now you need the credentials to match. That evening, I sat alone in my hotel room, my laptop open to emails from 3 different universities, all offering fellowship positions, all wanting me to continue my research under their auspices. The presentation that was supposed to ruin my career had somehow opened doors I'd never imagined, but I couldn't feel happy about it. Not yet. Not with the weight of losing Vanessa pressing down on my chest like a physical thing. My phone rang at midnight. I almost didn't answer, but some part of me hoped it might be Vanessa, ready to apologize, to explain, to somehow make this right. It was my father. His voice was gruff, uncertain. Victoria? Your mother told me what happened at the conference. I waited, bracing for another lecture about family loyalty. Is it true? He asked. Did Vanessa really steal your research? Yes, Dad. I have proof. Emails, files, everything. A long silence. Then, I'm sorry. Those 2 words, so unexpected, made my eyes sting with tears. Your mother, she thinks we should support Vanessa. That family means standing together no matter what. But I remember when you stayed home to help me through cancer. I remember you giving up Stanford, putting your life on hold, and I remember thinking, this girl has the biggest heart of anyone I know. Dad? Let me finish. He cleared his throat. Vanessa was always the ambitious one. We encouraged that, maybe too much. We made excuses for her selfishness because we told ourselves it was drive, determination. But what she did to you, there's no excuse for that. I didn't know what to say. I'm proud of you, he said, for standing up for yourself, for not letting her get away with it. I know your mother doesn't understand yet, but she will. Give her time. Thank you, I whispered. After we hung up, I cried for the first time since the presentation. Not from sadness or anger, but from relief. At least one parent saw me, understood what this had cost. The fallout from the conference spread quickly through the academic world. Within days, the story was on science blogs and academic Twitter. Twin sister steals siblings' research for keynote address became a cautionary tale about integrity and the pressures of academic success. Columbia University opened an investigation. 3 of Vanessa's graduate students came forward with their own allegations of stolen work, smaller thefts that hadn't seemed worth fighting over until they saw someone else stand up to her. The pattern was clear. Vanessa had built her entire career on taking credit for other people's work. MIT began reviewing her dissertation. Within a month, they found that significant portions had been plagiarized from an obscure German paper that Vanessa had assumed no one would find. Her tenure case was denied. Her position at Columbia was terminated. The papers she'd published were retracted, one by one, as co-authors came forward to say she'd contributed nothing to the research she'd claimed credit for. Vanessa's carefully constructed career collapsed like a house of cards, and I watched it happen from Seattle, where I'd returned to finish out my notice at Cascade Water Solutions before starting my PhD at the University of Michigan in the fall. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt sad. My mother didn't speak to me for 3 months. When she finally called, her voice was small and tired. Vanessa moved back home, she said. She couldn't afford her New York apartment after losing her job. How is she? I asked, because some part of me still cared despite everything. Angry, depressed, blaming everyone but herself. She starts therapy next week, court-ordered as part of a settlement with Columbia. And you? How are you? I'm trying to understand how I raised a daughter who would steal from her own sister. My mother's voice cracked. I'm trying to understand how I didn't see it, how I enabled it by always putting her first. Mom, you didn't know. I did know, Victoria. Or I should have. All those times you stepped aside for Vanessa, gave up opportunities so she could shine, and I let it happen because it was easier than challenging her. I owe you an apology for that. I didn't know what to say. All my life, I'd waited for my mother to see me as equally important to Vanessa. Now that it was happening, it felt hollow. I read your research paper, she continued. The one that finally got published under your name. Your father and I, we didn't really understand what you were working on before, but we read it together, looked up the terms we didn't know. Victoria, it's brilliant. Thank you. I'm proud of you, not just for the research, but for standing up for yourself, for not letting Vanessa take what was yours. I should have said that months ago. We talked for another hour, carefully rebuilding a relationship that had been damaged by years of favoritism. It wasn't forgiveness yet on either side, but it was a start. As for Vanessa, I didn't hear from her directly for almost a year. Then, one day, an email appeared in my inbox. Victoria, I'm sorry for what I did. I've been in therapy for 8 months now, trying to understand why I thought it was acceptable to steal from you. My therapist says I have narcissistic tendencies that I need to work on, that I was so focused on success and recognition that I lost sight of basic ethics, that I saw you as competition rather than as a sister who loved me. The email continued for several paragraphs, outlining her realizations about her behavior, her regrets about our destroyed relationship, her acknowledgement that she'd been wrong. I don't expect you to forgive me, she wrote at the end. I don't know if I could forgive someone who did what I did. But I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what I was, and I'm trying to become someone better. I hope you're doing well with your research. You always deserved success more than I did because you achieved it honestly. I read the email 3 times, looking for manipulation or justification or excuses, but it seemed genuine, or as genuine as Vanessa was capable of being. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I saved the email in a folder and went about my life. I had work to do, research to complete, a career to build on my own terms. 2 years after the conference in Chicago, I defended my PhD dissertation at the University of Michigan. My thesis on advanced gray water recycling systems was accepted with highest honors. My parents flew in from Portland, both of them sitting proudly in the front row as I presented my work. Vanessa wasn't there. She'd sent a card a few weeks earlier, congratulating me and expressing pride in my accomplishment. She was working for an environmental consulting firm now, doing solid but unglamorous work, no longer in a position where she could steal from junior researchers. We exchanged emails occasionally, brief and polite, rebuilding something that might eventually resemble a relationship. But we would never be what we were. That twin bond, that sense of being 2 halves of one whole, was gone. She'd broken it when she decided her ambition mattered more than my trust. At the reception after my defense, Dr. Huang, who'd flown in from her position on my dissertation committee, raised a glass. To Dr. Victoria Chen, she said, who showed us all that integrity isn't just about following rules. It's about having the courage to fight for truth even when it costs you everything. Everyone drank to that, and I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness for Vanessa, not yet, maybe never, but acceptance of what had happened and pride in how I'd responded. I'd lost a sister, but I'd found myself. My name is Dr. Victoria Chen. I'm 37 years old. I'm an assistant professor at Northwestern University with my own research lab and a team of graduate students I mentor with care and respect. I've published 12 papers on sustainable water systems, all original work that I can claim with complete honesty. And when I teach my first-year graduate students, I tell them the story of the conference in Chicago. Not to shame my sister, but to illustrate a point. Your integrity is the foundation of your career. I tell them, your name on a paper means you did the work, honestly and ethically. The moment you compromise that, whether through outright theft or subtle plagiarism, or taking credit for a student's ideas, you've destroyed something that can never be fully rebuilt. Some of them look skeptical. They don't understand how success and integrity can coexist in a competitive academic world. So I show them my research, my publications, my funded grants, and I tell them that everything I have, I earned, honestly. That the shortcuts other people take might seem to work in the short term, but they always catch up to you eventually. And I tell them about the woman at the conference who cried when she saw me stand up to theft, who'd been stolen from and never found the courage to speak up. I tell them that our integrity isn't just about protecting ourselves, it's about protecting everyone who comes after us, making sure the next generation doesn't have to fight the same battles. Most of my students understand then. They commit to doing their work honestly, to building careers they can be proud of. A few don't. They cut corners, take credit for others' work, prioritize success over ethics. When I catch them, and I always catch them eventually, I don't give them second chances. I document everything and report them to the university, because I learned the hard way that people who steal don't stop with one theft. They keep taking until someone forces them to stop. I think about Vanessa sometimes. About the brilliant sister I thought I knew, the twin who was supposed to be my closest ally. I wonder if she ever thinks about the conference, about the moment everything she'd built came crashing down because she couldn't resist stealing one more time. Mostly, though, I don't think about her at all. I'm too busy building a career I can be proud of, mentoring students who will go on to make real contributions to the field, and living a life where success and integrity aren't competing values, but complementary ones. Last month, I got an invitation to give a keynote address at the National Water Resources Conference, the same conference where 5 years ago, Vanessa stole my research. the same ballroom where I watched my work presented under her name. This time, it will be different. This time, I'll walk onto that stage as Dr. Victoria Chen, established researcher, respected professor, someone who earned her reputation honestly. And when I present my research, every word will be mine. Every idea, every data point, every conclusion. No one will be able to take that away from me because I built it on a foundation of truth. The conference is next month. I've been preparing my presentation, but this time I'm not nervous. This time, I know exactly who I am and what I've accomplished. My name is Dr. Victoria Chen. I'm 37 years old, and I'm finally completely myself. The night before the keynote, I'll probably call my parents. My father will tell me he's proud of me. My mother will cry a little, remembering everything we've been through. And somewhere in Portland, Vanessa might see the conference announcement and realize that her attempt to steal my future only delayed it, not destroyed it. Because here's what I've learned. You can't steal someone's potential. You can't steal their determination or their resilience or their ability to rebuild after betrayal. Vanessa took my research, but she couldn't take what made me capable of creating it in the first place. And that's the difference between us. She built her career on theft and lies. I built mine on hard work and truth. Her foundation crumbled the moment someone challenged it. Mine has only grown stronger with time. So when I stand on that stage next month, I won't be thinking about revenge or vindication. I won't be thinking about Vanessa at all. I'll be thinking about my research, about the students I've mentored, about the contribution I'm making to a field I love. I'll be thinking about the woman at the conference 5 years ago who cried when I spoke up, and all the other people who've told me since that my story gave them courage to fight their own battles. And I'll be thinking about the girl I was at 18, giving up Stanford to care for her father, believing she was sacrificing her dreams for family. That girl couldn't have imagined standing where I am now, but every choice she made led here. Some paths are longer than others. Some require detours and setbacks and betrayals that feel like the end of the world. But if you keep moving forward, if you refuse to let other people's actions define your worth, you eventually arrive somewhere beautiful, somewhere entirely your own. That's where I am now, and no one, not even my identical twin, can take that away from me.